The smartest and intelligent lawyer for Yoruba land, na be dis man, Barrister Dele. Make una hear wetin he talk about dis Tinubu government. Make una see the way wey e take combine Tinubu and the government, the way they combine all of them together. Make una hear dis man out. He finish work.
Nigeria will ever have.
When we heard the threat from President Donald Trump saying, I'm going to invade Nigeria, guns a-blazing, what's the first step that came to your head?
I didn't hear a threat. I heard a responsible leader calling irresponsible rulers to do their job. The threat came only after a failure might have occurred. As irresponsible as I might have found that threat, the reality is that he was calling out the crass irresponsibility and complicity of the Nigerian government and rulers. So I didn't hear, primarily what I heard was somebody speaking up that might perhaps unblock the blocked ears of the rulers of Nigeria.
Did you take issue at all with the rhetoric, calling us a disgrace, that now disgraced country and things like that?
Has he lied? Once upon a time, I used to enjoy my trips around the west coast of Africa. I'll go to Gambia, Ghana, and I used to enjoy the welcome until about 5-7 years ago. I saw increasing hostility because of the disappointment that Nigeria has proven itself to be in the Committee of Nations. So it doesn't require Trump to inform me of the fact that Nigeria has been serially disgraced all over the world on multiple occasions, largely because of the kind of irresponsible rulers that we have been cursed with. So I don't need Trump to tell me about the disgrace that has befallen my country. He hasn't lied. I look at the truth, not the person speaking the truth. When it's the truth, you just have to accept it for what it is. What is it about us that has been graceful or that has inspired pride?
So somewhere in your mind, you think Donald Trump is altruistic, the savior of Christians in Nigeria?
Look, Kayla, Yorubas have this proverb that the child that does not listen to admonitions at home will be taught outside. There is nothing Trump said or alleged that is not substantially true. The fact that the Nigerian government has ignored the reality of a genocide is not in doubt. The fact that the Nigerian government has been complicit in that genocide is equally beyond argument. These are things that most of us have been saying, including me, in books, in speeches. We've been saying this for over 10 years. So it doesn't require Trump to speak to the truth of what is happening. It is because it is Trump that has spoken that all this brouhaha is happening. What has Trump said that hasn't been said by multiple Nigerians within Nigeria?
The issue is, for many who are listening to Donald Trump say these things and, the words that he used, guns are blazing. Yes, in many ways, it could be that we've forgotten what the message is and focused on the messenger and how the messenger made that message. However, an intervention, an invasion, is that something that you would welcome?
See, Trump did not threaten an invasion. Don't let's kid ourselves. There are multiple evidence of Nigeria going around cap in hand. We've become essentially in the hands of our rulers a beggar nation. The same country that went to stabilize Sierra Leone, stabilize Liberia, is the same one that cannot fight a ragtag army of Fulani extremists and Islamist jihadists simply because persons within his government and his military have compromised his territorial integrity and discounted the safety of his citizens. That is why it has taken a Trump to be breathing the riot act and be telling us that if we won't do it, he will come do it. Let's focus on the fact that we have these problems. Let's leave the fact that we don't like the language of Donald Trump. Let's forget all these attempts at beating up nationalistic fervors. It makes no difference to the dying man in the Benue Trough and in the plateau who comes to save him. You have reported cases such as Yelawata, where you have a military forward operating base less than a kilometer from Yelawata. Instead of engaging with those who killed over 200 Nigerians, they were busy shooting in the air. And then you want that person to bicker about whether it's Americans who came to save him. It is a function of the serial failure of the Nigerian state that we're even having this kind of conversation in the first place. But I am not interested in the nationalistic propaganda that has been coming out in response to Donald Trump's incendiary language. If we will tidy up our homes, if we will do the right thing, a Donald Trump rant will count for nothing. At the end of the day, Nigeria is not Somalia. It's not some small homogeneous community where you can come. There are more nuances to our issues than the black and white that Donald Trump would like to paint it. But the reality is that the irresponsibility of the Nigerian government is what has led to a situation. Our situation might be likened to that of an irresponsible father who has allowed his home to fall into disrepair, his children to left them to serial abuse, and then a neighbor who happens to be more responsible, however garrulous you might call him, however much you might deprecate his method, he recognizes the humanity of the children that the father has left irresponsibly to be slaughtered. The man went to Yelawa, he went to Benue. Almost a week after the massacre, he couldn't even be bothered to go to Yelawata. What did he say? Oh, the road was bad. But he could have a party in Makurdi. Please, if that is what it takes, if it will take a madman to speak to our irresponsible rulers, so be it. Or has he lied? And he hasn't threatened the invasion. He said, go and do it or I will do it. Why can't they focus on doing it instead of focusing on I will do it if you don't do it? It was irresponsible for the American to talk about gun blazing. How many times have we gone to ask them to come and help us? And then they can see that we are irresponsible and complicit in the mess we are asking help for. Please, I'm not focusing on Trump's language. I'm focusing on the failure of our own government and the serious failure of the Nigerian state.
Well then, Mr. Farotimi, let's talk about that failure. Do you think there's a Christian genocide in Nigeria?
Let me put it this way. Religion is a matter of identity in northern Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians are completely ignorant about the history of religion in northern Nigeria. So if it quacks like a dog, walk like a dog, we should surely be able to call it a dog. That is what has been happening all this while. And these communities have been screaming and screeching all this while. And the reality is that we are all lying to ourselves if we do not admit to the fact that Christians are targeted, particularly in the Middle Belt and in northern Nigeria. Deborah Joseph is not an animist. An entire community found the grace to be silent when a young woman was murdered and burnt within the confines of a higher institution. What has happened? When those persons were charged to court, how many people came out to offer free legal services to them? What has happened to them? Where is the accountability? Where is the accountability? And then they speak to a genocide and we want to quibble about it. Let's leave the name they want to call it. These are human beings that are dying. What about Mr. Jackson? A man was attacked on his own farm. He struggled and managed to free himself. The attacker still pursued him. He killed his attacker with the attacker's knife. Our Supreme Court deemed that a murder. You have a system that discriminates deliberately, and then we are still quibbling. Let's leave the terminologies and all of that and focus on the facts. Whether the person is Muslim or Christian, Fulani, Ijaw, Yoruba, Lantan, it does not matter whether he's Atia. The important thing is that this person is not only human, he's a Nigerian within the Nigerian space, and the Nigerian state has serially failed him.
The fact that this has been going on for so many years, does that point to some kind of collusion with the Nigerian government, or are we just talking about irresponsible leadership here?
Let's be clear about something. When the facts are not in dispute, we shouldn't argue with that again. We all are equally aware of the fact that the Emirates convicted persons for funding terrorism in Nigeria and shared their intelligence with the Nigerian government. Nothing has ever happened to them. Nnamdi Kanu is holed up in a jail cell today, in a DSS cell. But Bello Turji is busy strolling around, issuing ultimatums. They are going around, sometimes in convoys as strong as 500, and Nigerian government is negotiating peace. Look, the narratives we have created is one that denies the truth, but the truth continues to slap us in the face on a daily basis if we care to look. Reality is, whether we call it genocide, whether we call it irresponsibility, whether we call it complicity, the reality is that what is happening in Nigeria is intolerable. That somebody somewhere found the grace to get involved to the point where they are telling us, go fix it or who can't fix it. It speaks to the height of irresponsibility that has come to characterize Nigeria, its governance, and everything connected to it. But it does not shift the truth, and it does not change the fact. There are people dying in droves, and the government, for whatever reason, the same Nigeria that could once enforce peace in faraway land is no longer able to enforce peace in his own country. It was Abacha that said, when insurrection, insurgency, insecurity last longer than 24 hours, government is involved. Let them ask themselves what has happened to us.
Some have said that calling the insecurity in Nigeria or defining our insecurity based on religious lines would be a little simplistic. I got an analogy recently where someone said our insecurity in Nigeria is like soup. There are too many ingredients inside of it. It's even gotten to a point where you can't exactly separate the ingredients. There might be some genocide going on in there. There's land grabbing going on. There's banditry. There's kidnapping. There's a business going on in here. So a lot of things have led to where we are, which in many ways is why the Nigerian government is saying, listen, President Trump, we hear you, but what you're saying is based on wrong intelligence. There's more to it than you think. What do you make of that?
And there really is very little that is unique about our situation. What is unique is that for the first time, somebody has spoken and our government is listening. So what I was saying in essence is very simple. Don't come into Nigeria gun blazing, but but there are sufficient body of laws within the international community that should serve as sufficient to deal with the situation he was describing. If you say there is a genocide, you have more than enough to work with. And I can't recall a single place that America